That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, it's been a busy summer. So many events, and it's not over yet. We still have, Tim just reminded me that we have events next weekend. We're doing Booten Day. Tim is doing Booten Day. Great event on the 29th, and I'll be doing the Morristown Festival on the Green. And so, and beers. And so after that, we get to rest a little while anyway.
When is Morris?
Also on the 29th. So 2 events in the same day. Yep.
Sunday, next Sunday.
Next Sunday. Okay. Waterloo is still going on. We're still needing volunteers. Bobby Egan is getting us real organized. Is Bobby in the house? There you are. Raise your hand big and high because volunteering is great. It's fun. And we have a couple of more days at Waterloo that we're going to need people to help us out. We've got events. People helping on next Sunday would be great. Let us know, please. Talk to Bobby.
Saturday, not Sunday. Did you just say Sunday? I'm sorry.
The 29th, whatever day that is. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. I'm confused enough. Okay. Archives. Our archives are getting so much joy these days. People are learning that we are organizing, that there are our archives are organized and online, and they're giving us all kinds of stuff. And you're going to see some of those things today in my presentation. And so please come, call up John Pritow. There he is back there. Talk to that man about coming and with an agenda, something that you'd like to find out about, something you'd like to research. That's what we're here for. Or check us out online on our website. There's a pull-down menu for the archives, and it's searchable, and all kinds of pictures and wonderful things will come up. So do that. Lots and lots of projects going on. We've got our block project in Wharton that is finally almost 99% completed. As a matter of fact, there'll be some pictures of that project in my presentation today. And also I'll be doing an industrial heritage walk there tomorrow. So if anybody would like to join that walk, I've got some space. Please see me afterwards. Tomorrow, Saturday. Yes. So come and see me, and I'll remind again at the end. Do we have any new members tonight? Old members? Do we have any guests who we haven't seen here before? Tell us who you are, please. Welcome. Sir? Did we have some other new faces? You gentlemen in the back, you haven't been here before. Welcome. Glad to see you. Think about joining us. Bill McKelvey. Okay, you're going to tell us about your show and tell.
I didn't realize you were going to put me on so early. Wait a minute. Where do you want me?
In front of the camera at the top of the. Now you can see.
Like that?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. I'm right there. I have 2 friends of mine that I'd like to introduce to you. It's Rand and Scott Ermston, both right here in the front. Rand did the mechanical rebuilding on the 1927 bus that Liberty Historic Railway owns. And Scott is a real researcher, and his subject is the Hibernia Mine Railroad. So anybody knows anything about Scott? I doubt that you know more than Scott, but you might. So talk to Scott at the end of the meeting. my show and tell for tonight is something you may not know. Standard railroad spike goes in the cross tie. The cross tie is this way. It cuts right through the grain of the wood and locks in place. The Morris Canal inclined planes had a rail that ran up, two rails that ran up the plane, and underneath them were big timbers. If you drove these spikes in to hold the rail on, all it would do was split open the timbers. So for the inclined plane, you have to have spikes like this that have the sharp point 90 degrees away from the regular spike. And we have found some of these on the Waterloo inclined plane, but a little secret, they also use these today on the railroad to hold down the switch machines because those spikes are 90 degrees from the normal spikes. So two more items for your archives. We had a wonderful celebration of the 50 years of the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission this past Saturday at Prowsville Mill, just above Stockton, New Jersey. And we had, it was just great, but boy, some of those people are terribly old. I couldn't get over it. But it was great to see Jim Amon. Jim Amon was the first executive director of the DNR Canal Commission, and he was a wonderful leader. The commission's work is to control development along the canal, and they have approval authority for new construction projects. And Jim got up and explained one particular project that he was proud of. But I'll start with this. This I picked up at the in the sawmill down there at Prowsville, and it is a map of the East Coast Greenway through the entire state of New Jersey, page by page. And the entire DNR Canal is part of the East Coast Greenway from New Brunswick all the way down to Trenton. And then, of course, there's a branch that goes up the feeder canal. But there was one particular link in this Greenway that the DNR Canal Commission had control over. And that was when they replaced the bridge, the railroad bridge that was at Crosswicks Creek. What's the matter? Better? The old railroad bridge at Crosswicks Creek was to be totally rebuilt. And in order to do that, they submitted plans to the DNR Canal Commission. And Jim Amon said to them, well, we'd like to see a walkway on the side of the bridge so that people can be a continuous part of this East Coast Greenway. And the state of New Jersey said, whoa, that's going to cost $500,000 to $700,000. Do you have the money for that? Amon says, no. And so they said to Jim, they says, well, what are you going to bring to the table? And Jim says, the permit. And it got done. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to need to see my slides, so I'm going to turn this around. And I am going to reorganize everything. That should be good. Okay. All right, we're going to have two parts to this presentation tonight. I'm going to be talking about archives and adventures, and then we're going to hear from Rich, and he's going to tell us about
Check.
yes. Can everybody hear me back there? Is that better? Okay. Okay. And then Rich is going to tell us about adventures with the museum and our Canal Museum at Waterloo. Okay, now, um, with our new archives in place, people call us all the time and they bring us all kinds of treasures, big treasures, large treasures. And lately we've gotten a lot of very interesting canal related, some slightly canal related, sometimes there's always a story buried in those documents someplace. So hopefully I'm going to show you pictures of all kinds of old ratty account books, and I'm hoping I'm going to make it interesting. First of all, I have to get a new slide. Okay. 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 All right. This first adventure is a very, very rare report of the Morris Canal and Banking Company from 1856. So this is one I don't think we knew of a copy that existed. And John, 1826. I'm always dropping a couple thousand years. John made a connection with the Mount Olive Library, and they happened to have a copy. And they were very interested in us, and we were very interested in this document. And they were very interested in brokering a relationship. And they actually gave us on permanent loan a copy of this document. And so it's got lots of incredible information in it. It's very, very interesting to be able to read exactly what those guys were thinking back then when they were working very early on in the canal. Okay.
Got open chairs up here, like, come on over.
I think I get to even closer. I'm gonna eat this thing. Okay. Can do that. All right. Last page. There's a message to George McCullough from Ephraim Beach, and he's the chief engineer, and he's giving an accounting of what's going on with the canal at that point. And he says there's 1,100 guys working on the canal, and they're spending all kinds of money excavating, $6,400, 42 on masonry, bridges, $2,000. And then on the western division of the canal, the same kind of money is being spent. So far they spent $206,000. But he's got bad news for Mr. McCullough, because he's calculating what it's going to cost to do the rest of the work. And so at this point, he's saying it's going to cost $1 million.
And this is hand digging.
Hand digging, yes. But does anybody remember how much it's actually going to cost to build the canal? Wow, we've got real canal engineers here. Yes, it's going to cost them $3 million. But so this is very early on, and still they're not quite getting it, how much this is going to cost. Okay. Any Booton people here today? Somebody from Booton? People who are interested in the iron industry in Morris County? Want to talk to you later about that mine railroad. There were many iron masters in Morris County pre-canal. There was the ironworks that we've seen in Booton that was very much involved with the canal, but in Dover, Blackwell and McFarland, they were the iron company that started in the 18-teens and existed all the way into the 1860s. And so in conversation with the Dover Historical Society, recently, they received a donation of this wonderful account book. It was found in the attic of some house in Dover. And Linda Mullins, one of their executives, showed us this book and decided that it had much, much more to do with the canal than it had to do with Dover history. And she gave this book to us on an extended loan. And it is a true marvel. It's wonderful. From the very early 1800s. So these are pictures when Blackwell and McFarland came to town in 1819, Dover was really not much of a place at all. By 1825, they were really interested in getting a town to go along with their industrial activities, and so they had this map produced. It's a marvelous map. The original of it is in the library in Morristown. So you can see that Boonton really isn't much of a place at all. I keep skipping my towns. Dover really isn't much of a place at all. Mill Pond, mill buildings at the dam at the end of the pond, and they've actually, you can see the red lines going up and down and across the bottom. Those are the streets that they're projecting to create in the new town that they hope to create. They actually owned the whole of the acreage that Dover occupies today, and so they were. Well, this is what passed for major industry in Morris County in 1825. Okay, by the time these maps were drawn, this is the Robinson Atlas, and these are copies from our collection. You can see the Dover had grown a bit, and so the company had actually organized a grid plan of streets, sold off lots, and it had become a major transportation center, first for the Morris Canal, and you can see their big basin there
Behind the library.
behind the library. Okay. The account book has many interesting things. How many people have ever looked through an old handwritten account book like that? Okay. It falls apart. Yes, absolutely. This is an ancient book. It's very delicate. And this is before Excel, before Delete. Everything is handwritten. Paper is at a premium, and there's all kinds of notes written every place. And exactly how it's arranged is sort of up to the guy who was scribbling in it. And so it's a mystery to unwind. And so
There's one page for each account.
ideally, but not always organized as you might imagine, Pierce. Could I continue, please? Thank you. Okay, all of the major iron masters in Morris County are doing business here. They, of course, are running a foundry. Those gentlemen are running bloomery forges, making wrought iron. Farland and Blackwell are running a foundry, and they're making cast iron. So the Jacksons, both Joseph and William, have pages, not always in the right order, and scattered throughout the book. And even Stephen Vail, iron master from Morristown, was doing business there. And so you can see some of the dates and some of the bills that they were paying for different things, forged hammers and forged rings and all different kinds of things. Okay. Now, the dates that are covered in this book, they start with 1830, 1830, and it goes to 1834. And so we're talking about before the canal opens. So all the work that they're doing for the canal is for the inclined planes, the original inclined planes, the inclined planes that look like this. This is a picture from a banknote, Dover Bank, and that's a picture of the Boonton plane as it looked in 1832. Not like the ones that we see in the pictures that we have today. And so there are pages and pages and pages of the work they were doing with the original inclined planes. So this is going to be very interesting to eventually find out what that's all about. So they've got the ledgers containing 92 pages, and 30 of those pages are Morris Canal business. So you can see that they were the best customer. Pages and pages of items that they were casting for those original inclined planes. Okay, there are some of the handwriting is really pretty good. You can read right across the top. Castings for the Morris Canal on both pages, and then lists of nomenclatures of different kinds of parts. Some of it is easy to understand. Some of it is a bit difficult. We've got lists of information that have been handed down in our archives. The task will be to compare it to the actual entries in the original book. So there's a copy of the material that was in our archives, and it's undated, and does not specify whose list it is, but comparing the list of parts for a typical inclined plane, and this nomenclature will be a great help in trying to understand what's going on in that book. And there's some folks there actually pouring a casting in a foundry. Okay, so another interesting donation, this one from Bill McKelvey. He dropped off a box of goodies and all kinds of things, but in the bottom of that box was this account book. And it was an envelope, and it said it was a Morris Canal account book, and we were thrilled. But we looked through when we found, well, no, wasn't quite. It was Mr. Smith's own book of his adventures, his life. He was lock tender, storekeeper, plank road toll coal taker, and all through all of that, he kept this book and kept adding to it and adding to it in an incredibly disorganized fashion. And so what does that have to do with the canals? Okay, well, he was never actually working on the Morris Canal, but he was working on the D&H Canal, which is a New York canal, comes down from Pennsylvania into New York State and up to Kingston. And so he was a lock tender there. And he has pages that he meticulously records what he was paid. Over on the right-hand side, he lists being paid for tending lock, for doing labor. He got extra pay for labor, and all the toll he collected. He collected. Oh goodness. Okay. 1861, 66. And so he was a fanatic about writing down. Are you done? Thank you. Okay. He meticulously kept records that were important to him. And the most interesting thing that as lock tender, tending lock, all canals have rules. Rules is about how business is to be conducted, and the lock tenders and plain tenders on all canals are required to keep order at their lock, order at their place, and to keep the traffic moving. And so, and they're required, if there are problems, to report those problems, and to so that the boat people involved can be properly fined and reprimanded. And so he meticulously kept track of every time something went wrong. And so here are two of them, but my favorite one is, these incidents didn't happen very often, maybe twice a month, but every time he wrote them down. And at Lock 61 on July the 23rd, 1867, this to certify that boat 2121 lost 2 lockages. And so by the time the third light boat was in the lock, he came down quite close. He took hold of the, I told him to take hold of the line and move over to the berm, but he came down to me at the mouth of the lock and said, "Go to hell." He said, "I do as I please." And so he led his boat up against the drop gate and blocked the canal for some time. So rowdies in those days too. So, and page after page, he records these incidents. So I don't think we've ever seen anything quite so personal about the activities of what went on in those good old days.
What does it mean to lose 2 lockages?
The proper handling of the lock is you take one boat down and one boat up. one boat down, one boat up. You're supposed to, keep the traffic moving. And when somebody screws up and doesn't get their boat in there efficiently, you're wasting a whole lockage. And the company is upset. The Morris Canal rules and regulations, which you've got big copies of, determines how much you would be fined for messing up like that. They didn't like that. All right. One of the interesting things is Francis wasn't really Francis. He had reinvented himself. Tucked in one of the back pages of the book is his baptismal certificate. So he's really Mr. Schmidt and not Mr. Smith. So things that you find, the little personal things left behind in these books can be very interesting. Okay. We also have a wonderful donation of store ledgers from Tawako. And this was the general/canal store at the corner of what's now 202 and Pine Brook Road. And those are some pictures of the building. And so we had 9 account books. These are in rather rough shape, but still fascinating. Here are some account pages, some atlas pages from 1868, the Beers Atlas, and you can see from the blow up, there's the canal store right there at the crossroads, and the canal is the dotted black line, and the highway is the intersection of the 2 red lines. And yes, and all around are the names of the neighbors, also the patrons for the store. So as you read the books, those are the people who are in for a pound of butter, a beer, some medicine, whatever they need. They're shopping at the store. So there are the books. As you can see, they're in rough shape, but still very interesting. I'm just beginning to go through them. We know that there's lots of stories there, but those stories they were donated by a gentleman whose family had lived in the next property over. They had been stored in a barn. The barn was torn down and they were stuck away in an attic. They had obviously gotten wet at some time, and they had been in his possession for years, and he just decided, well, no, they really deserved a better home. And so we are giving them a better home. So Mr. Kitchell was the storekeeper, and these were his day books. So this is the storekeeper usually initials the first page of the book with whose book it is and when he's starting to use that particular book. And so he got very carried away on this one, E. Kitchell, his day book. And there's another version with another scribbled notation below that you can't quite read because the page is torn. The paper is so old and so delicate. Lots and lots of notes stuck in different places that need to be investigated. This is the Whitehall store. Tawako used to be called Whitehall, and copies of the ledger pages. And so this is, so on the left side of he's accounting for sales. And so people are stopping for all different kinds of things, and you can read what they're buying. And on the left side, people are stopping by on the same day. Every customer, all of those customers are local people, and they're running accounts. No credit cards in those days, but the storekeeper would keep a careful account, and everybody would have a number, and he kept the numbers in the column at the outside of the margin, and wrote down what they were buying and whether they were buying on credit. And then on the other right-hand side, people are dropping in, they're paying for their paying off their accounts, and he's keeping careful track of that as well. And you see that you can find some very personal information. Mr. Edwards is definitely ill because he's stopping by and he's buying liniment and paregoric and pills and castor oil. And he's spending $3.70, which is a lot of money in those days, on his fix up his ailments. No insurance, no Medicare. So people are buying a lot of sugar, tobacco, butter, and beer. Those centuries over and over and over again. So interesting to see what people are buying. Okay. Now, an indenture. Not all indentures turn out well, though, so I warn you in advance. This is the inclined plane tender's house at Plane 3 in Canal Park in Ledgewood. And so Canal Park is famous for inclined plane number 2. That's the one that's now preserved in a park. And so adjacent to the parking lot is this old beat up house, which nobody ever paid attention to. Early this year, the borough of Roxbury brought to our attention that they were interested in, they thought that this was actually the plane tender's house for Plane 3, and we should investigate it, and we should try to buy it. We should try to buy it. Anyway, so we investigated it, and well, a long tail pursued. So here is a abandonment drawing of the inclined plane. And so right in the middle is the plane tender's house that we were investigating. To the right is Plane 2, the one that's in the park, past the big canal basin. And then to the left, Plane 3, that is going downhill into Ledgewood. And you see that each of those planes had a plane tender's house and a brakeman's house, plane tender's house, brakeman house. And so the only one that is still extant is the one for number 3. That's the one that's circled with the big call out. So we looked that up in the property books, and we discovered that that it had been Charles McWilliams, and he had come to well, this was Drakestown originally before it was Ledgewood, and in 1903 became the resident and replaced Mr. Scripture as the plane tender, and then it shows where the property changed hands. And so, but at that point, we lose track of it, except that when the canal is being abandoned, the rent is, we'll go with the next one. Let's see about that. When the canal was being abandoned, they sent John Waters, a canal company employee, around to take pictures of all the properties that the canal company owned, and was a terrible photographer, but he managed to get a decent picture of this building, the only real decent picture that exists. And so he wrote up pages that found their way into an album. The album is owned by the ladies, and so we know that this was building 49. 6-room frame dwelling in fair condition, occupied by Charles McWilliams, and he's paying $6 a month rent. So that's a lot of money in those days. And so McWilliams is realizing that the canal is going to be abandoned, and so he's offering to buy the house, and he's offering $500. And we don't know if he's actually succeeds in buying it, but he's still the tenant at that point. And so, okay. So we investigated, and we found the building was indeed the plane tender's house, but in terrible condition. You can see the side view facing the parking lot is, all right, I remember passing that house 100 times. But, you know, did I ever trespass? Not really, didn't really investigate. And so we did. We carefully investigated, and we found a building in terrible condition, holes in the roof, porch falling down. Yes, it has siding on it, has modern vinyl siding on it. But well, you will see the condition. We found out that the address of the owner, reached out to the owner, and to our distress, we found out that he had just put the property up for sale, and it was currently under contract. So, okay, what can we do? So I asked him for permission to enter the house and to photograph and measure, and he said, yes, we could do that. And so we investigated. So. Okay. There we go. So this is difficult to explain. Well, there's no way to explain. He was now living in Egg Harbor. He had sold the property. The building was in deplorable condition. It never since he had never it had never had septic. It had well it had that sink exited into a pipe that went out through the wall and into the lawn someplace. And the same for the bathroom facilities. It never did have an operating heating system when he was there. He had kerosene heaters that sort of filled in for keeping the building warm. And so he had moved away and sort of let the building go to ruin. So
Yeah.
I was afraid to look.
In the refrigerator, was 2 cans of beer.
Well, I forgot to say that my sidekick here, Steve, and I went and held a tape measure, took pictures, investigated into all the corners, found the guy's mail. The guy, I like his decorating scheme is lovely because he's the refrigerator and he's got all his bill and his mail stuck up on the wall. I can't, how can you comment? So the master bedroom is through the door to the right of the refrigerator. And so that was the master bedroom. And you remember the pails that were on the bed to catch the water that was coming through from the roof above. So it was. And there's the roof above. It's the upper bedroom was very airy, as you can see. So, oh dear. So we were hoping for something a little more interesting, but we found a disaster. But a very, very old house, a very interesting house.
It was about 3 rooms. It was 6.
Well, I'm not going to show you all of the things. We'll be here for breakfast. You can talk to Steve later. He was the co-investigator. So the house was in deplorable condition. It had been obviously in deplorable condition for many years, and so it is a house that is very old. It may have predated the canal, or it was built with used timber. Yes. So you can see the picture in the on the left. It's got hand hewn timbers next to saw cut timbers. The peak of the roof you can see in the picture at the top right is pinned together with no ridgepole like they did back in colonial times. Wooden sheathing. Very, very old construction.
So stove.
Oh, we liked it so much. We discovered that the closing for the building was going to be on a certain day, and that the current owner would be there on that day, and so we made ourselves available that day. And we met the gentleman. He was chatty and controversial and very ill, and wanted to talk about his pains and his aches. And we helped him carry a few things out of the house before he slammed the door. And so we asked him for the stove. And so the stove, Fatso, it's a laundry stove, now resides in the White Barn at Waterloo. I'm sorry? I really don't know. It's probably late 1800s. It's a very nice stove. You can see the way we found it, piled of stuff that was just opposite the stove such as it was. The stove still had the pots and pans on it from the last meal. So anyway, oh dear. Once we get involved, we get involved. And so we speak to everybody, call up everybody. We got invited to his meeting with the planning board. And so he plans not to knock it down, but to save the frame and extend it, but keep the end view facing the parking lot with the window that Beers pointed out. So that's what he told the people. I don't believe him. I think he's waiting for somebody to burn it down for him. It's an undersized lot. Me. Oh, well, when I met the previous owner, he and I buggy lugged it out to my car. And just managed to get up into the back of my car. And I drove away and wondering, what do I do now? So I called up Ken, Tim. Tim, fortunately, was at Waterloo. And so, I thought, whoa, okay, great, great. So I drove to Waterloo. The two of us managed to get Fatso out of the back of my car and is now in residence. It's a very nice stove. It'll make a nice addition to an exhibit about washing clothes. No, no. Absolutely. All the pieces are there. So a very nice acquisition. Also, there's the stove at Waterloo. There's one of the porch posts. It had fallen off, and so I retrieved it. I asked and got permission to take that away. So that's will be part of a future exhibit at some point. And also, in my last visit, because I visited many times and took very many pictures and measurements, so a good measured drawing of the building can be created. I found the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, hanging on the wall next to the door. So I confiscated them for posterity. There's the building today. So it's still in deplorable condition. It hasn't been touched. It's waiting to see its fate. So we don't know.
Changed hands now?
It has changed hands. So we'll see. Sir. It is, if you drive up into Canal Park, and you drive to where you would usually park to visit the inclined plane, you've already passed it. It's on your right. It's in the woods. Do not go there. It's private property. The house is in dangerous condition. It's all locked up now, so you know don't mess with it. If it has any value, if the guy decides he wants to flip it, I would encourage. Well, we plan to encourage the town to at least buy it for the property. It's immediately adjacent to their park, and any nonsense that this guy does and try to put a modern dwelling on it will only degrade the usefulness of that property to the park. So we'll see. So there it is.
On the National Register,
Oh, yes.
well, then this guy can't just mess around with it. It's within 200 feet of the National Register site.
It doesn't keep people from that.
No, it doesn't.
Taking a match to it.
No. See, I'm very jaded in my old age. And so you are, you know, those are my thoughts exactly. I think that that would be to his advantage if this house would just disappear. But he might flip it, and I might try to encourage the township to buy it at least for his property. So anyway, it was all a great adventure. No, didn't look it up.
Public information.
It would be. It would be, but I'm too lazy to look it up, or too busy to look it up, sorry. Anyway, these are the adventures that we get ourselves into. You get locked onto a course, and it very often leads to something very interesting. Sometimes the end is not the story that you would like to have at the end, but it was a very interesting building to investigate, and we'll see what happens next to the next chapter. So the last part of my presentation is about Block 2 East, the restoration project that we've heard over many, many, many times. And so at Wharton. And so it is finally, I'm loath to say finished, because this project doesn't seem like it's ever going to be absolutely finished. There's a few details that are always hanging on, but here's the historic picture taken in the early 1900s of the lock site when it was still occupied. The canal was still in operation, and there's the picture taken only a few weeks ago. So you can see that the lock site has been replicated painstakingly. So 17 years of grants and construction, and finally it's pretty much all put back together again. Okay, these are some pictures of, in the very beginning, on the upper right, that was the lock site. You can see the building is in ruins, falling apart, only a few pieces of wall still existing. And the lock is not in evidence at all. There are a couple of maybe stones in that lawn there. They might be something, they might not. Many times I gave tours here and I said, I told people about lock too, and they would say, yeah, yeah, we don't see any lock here. There was nothing there. People lived in this house. Yes, there's the pieces of the house. People had lived in this building and into the 1860s. Bob Goller, one of our members, photographed it and took some measurements of it back then. The last tenants moved out. Some kids set it on fire. The roof finally came down. The walls imploded. And by this time it was basically a ruin. The town put a fence around it to keep people from wandering in there and hurting themselves. The first part of the project was to do archaeology to establish whether there really was a lock there. The whole concept was to see if the lock could be restored and this site could be brought back to becoming a true asset to U-Force Park. And so that was the thing that they needed to find out, whether the stonework below grade was still in place, and that the stone walls on either side of that lock are built on a wooden platform. And that as long as that platform stays wet, the whole lock remains a unit. Those two side walls are on a raft, and the raft absolutely stays right in place. And so the water seeping through the lock all those years kept that floor wet, and it was in good shape. And so they could then rebuild the lock. The capstones and about 2 feet of the top of the lock have just been pushed in, as well as all the operating equipment. So this was a marvelous archaeological discovery to see not just pictures of a lock. They are,
Repointing.
this is December, and they're rushing to finish their contract, and they're trying to get the new the old stonework and the new stonework repointed before the freeze comes and they can no longer work. They actually shortly after this covered the whole lock with plastic and put heaters inside so they could finish this phase of the project. So they rebuilt the lock walls up to their original height and completely reconstructed it, salvaged pretty much all of the working parts of the lock. You can see the picture, the muddy gear wheel there on the right-hand side. So here's some pictures of the building as it was at the start of the project. The building was completely reconstructed using the same material. Pretty much all of the walls were just pushed into the cellar hole. So they just dug up and all the original stonework, and there's the scaffolding going around as the walls are going up again. And so there's a picture of just a few weeks ago, the building completely rebuilt, exactly as it appeared in the photograph, the few photographs that we have of the building.
Junk on the corner.
The junk on the corner, the rails around the building. Well, there's always junk around the corner someplace.
And here's the corner of the building. There on the corner. It looks like it's not, it's a vertical.
Okay.
It's gray vertical thing.
Okay, I don't see what you mean, but
There is no point.
never mind. All right. Pierce.
This.
That's the corner of the building.
But it's not stucco.
The building is
Downspout.
stuccoed.
Oh, downspout. Thank you.
Ah. It's it's a wonderful combination of both new and old. The building had to be reproduced exactly, as it could be determined to its historic site. and historic form. And so even to the fact that when it got so old that it was falling apart, they put pieces of inclined plane rail and cable around as a clamp to keep it from completely collapsing. And so and that was an incredible problem, trying to find rail appropriate to do that with. We finally found some trolley rail to put around there. Yes, there was a trinity pot. And so it all came back together again. It was restuccoed, repainted. And so after many years, it is now ready to be occupied. And so the last phase was to reconstruct or replace all the mechanical parts of the lock. And so this was another huge production. They had to be recast. And so the contractor established to his satisfaction that there was no place in the United States where those parts could be remanufactured. And so according to Bears,
No reason. Let him continue.
Doesn't explain.
No, he doesn't need to.
excuse me, please. According to the terms of the grant agreement, all the pieces, all the materials that go into the reconstruction process had to be manufactured in the United States. That's a great idea, right? We love that. Good idea. Federal money. Okay, well, it was determined after the parts had been manufactured in Poland and shipped to the United States. The grantor said, no, we found someplace you could have them made in the United States. So this is such a great idea because they were manufactured in Poland for like $40,000 and they were then remanufactured in the United States for $400,000. So there you go. Sometimes you just have to use your common sense. So these parts were remanufactured, installed. And so these are the this is the operating machinery for the drop gate at the bottom end of the lock. And so this is this machinery was installed so this lock could be operated by one man. So they didn't have balance beams, but one man could stand on the platform and crank both gates open and closed at one time. And so, yes, sort of. You knew I was going to say that. This is, you know, this project will be done someday. They tried to open the gates all the way and they wouldn't open all the way. They actually threw the gears out of alignment. So they're deciding whose problem that is, whether it's the contractor's problem or the borough's problem. So we would have liked to get our canal boat on Canal Day in and out of the lock, but the doors are open 6 feet and the canal boat is 8 feet. So that doesn't work. I know. Correct. That's correct. Yes, and they actually work. And this actually does work. I think trying to force the gates open, they pushed it out of alignment. So stay tuned. The original canal guys would have done this a bit quicker, I think. Yes, in 2 weeks. Yes. Okay, here is the upper end of the lock, the drop gate. This is the gate that goes up and down like this rather than open and close like that. And so the lock tender shanty has been reconstructed and all the original, the machinery that operated the drop gate has been replicated. And so you can see in the picture in the upper right-hand corner, the lever that open and closes the wicket gates in the bottom of the lock. You can see those in the center picture. They're butterfly valves that go like this. And so you open those gates to fill the lock. And so there's some pictures of the remanufactured equipment down there in the lower right-hand corner. And so all of that was installed. Unfortunately, there's no way to actually fill this lock with water. It butts up against the borough boundary, and beyond that is the former canal basin, but that's in Roxbury Township, and it is a certified wetland. And so it's going to take not impossible, but it's going to take some doing to actually someday connect this up to a water supply. But in the meantime, the machinery does operate it. We went to the final sign off when the engineers and the grantor DOT was there, and so they actually were required to make it work, and they did. With great effort, but they got it to work. And so it's meant to work with a lock full of water, which makes that huge gate at the bottom buoyant. And so it's no longer buoyant, and you can jack it up and down, but it's quite a job to do it. I think that's my last picture. All right. I thought I had one more. Okay, we don't. So many adventures, many stories, some boring old account books, and some dirty old houses, and a whole lock project. Now, if you're interested in this lock project, I happen to be doing an industrial heritage tour there tomorrow. So I've got spaces on that walk. If some of you folks would like to come on that walk, please come and see me after. I'll give you the map how to get there. I'd love to have you join us. Where's Ken? I think I do have a couple more pictures here, and this is not working. How can we go forward? Because I have pictures of the inside of the building.
Try again.
Ah, okay, this is good. Oh, we're back on scene. Then bear with me just another couple of minutes, and then it's going to be Rich's turn. Wharton Canal Day just a few weeks ago. Our boat ride ran all day. It was absolutely incredible. Millions, thousands of people anyway. And there's Tim up there in the corner giving the giving his talk and getting the whole event started. Finally, 2 weeks before the event, they finally gave us permission to furnish the building. So Pat Mueller, wave your hand, Pat, has been working with us 3 years to collect all kinds of wonderful things to put in this house. And so 2 weeks before, we finally get permission to furnish the building. So we went nuts, but we did it. We furnished it very nicely. It's not a finished job. There's lots of things to be fine-tuned. But as you can see, we've got furniture in place. The kitchen addition has got exhibits in place, and we're very proud of what we did.
So.
And there,
No.
no, that's not that stuff. That's another stuff. We have so many toys. In doing this, we actually had to sort of make an inventory of all the wonderful things that people have given us over the years, and we've got farming tools and stoves and all kinds of toys. And so we brought all of them to play to make this work. So anyway, here's U-Force Park, and this is what it looks like today, and this is what it could look like tomorrow. Thoughts or questions? Sir. They were mules for starters, and mules are expensive. I don't think you would want to pay for mules. We would love to have mules. There's a mule-driven canal boat ride at Umore Park in Pennsylvania, outside of Easton, and they've got a very nice canal boat that takes people up and down. Now, they do have mules, but you've got to stable them, feed them, take care of them. You know how much it costs to transport your mules? You know, you're just jackassing around, you know. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes. At the abandonment of the canal, the chief engineer, Mr. Vermeulen, made drawings. He was a history-minded guy, and he made drawings of the Boonton inclined plane and lock to great detail. He had draftsmen at his disposal, and they did make measure drawings. Sir.
I don't think there's any mules down in New Hope anymore, is there?
No,
Yeah.
they reconstructed that lock, but it leaked so badly that they couldn't use it.
Oh, okay.
And putting water in the canal there is also difficult.
Live in Easton, so I've done everything. On
Yes.
I volunteered there for like 10 years.
this site is unusual because it's easy to get the water in the canal, and that's
Yeah,
the only reason that this works. Sir,
Going back to the 1826 initial first annual report,
yes,
Mount Dollar Reflections.
yes.
Had a series on George McCullough, and he had one little section there, and he talked about that support and its place in history. He said, best of my knowledge, there's only one copy in existence at the U.S. Library of Congress.
Okay,
Now we know that.
okay. Thank you for that perspective. Yes, it's marvelous when people reach out to us, and John does a marvelous job of making partnerships. And so this is how we get these treasures. Rich, I think it's your turn. Come on. Wake up, wake him up, wake him up. Thank you.
How fast do I have to go? So I have to show you. There's all the pictures, but I'm done, that's it, I'm done. Pretty darn fast. PDF files.
So he don't. That's.
Yeah, I don't.
It's not in his book, so, okay. Nope.
He's made some.
Yeah. We'll get it.
Start over.
Yeah. When years did you become president?
Yeah.
12 years ago, now.
What's that?
12 years ago, we were-
12 years ago, so 14 years ago, I became director. I can't remember the years anymore. So, I don't know, all the hairs falling out of my head, the brain cells falling out with them.
Five.
First I ever worked. PDF file right here. You have to understand, I have Windows 7. What is that, now 11 or something? Aha. Oh, you could have left it on that one. Where am I crashing now on this?
Use the arrows.
So, but anyway.
Let's see if we can get this to work. All right, let's see.
Yeah.
Now it's close to the.
All right. Yes, I have to speak into the microphone. I've been director of the museum for now 14 years. Our past president made me the director. He talked to Bruce Tell and convinced him to give up the directorship of the museum. This picture actually goes back probably to that date when Bruce Tell, Parry, and I were working on the museum. This is probably about 2003 or something like that. I can't remember. That's the old paint job. And we were working on the outdoor exhibits, trying to preserve them, doing our best to try and keep them up and going. And I don't know if you can see this, but Superman pulled out the beam from underneath the cradle car wheel. And I looked at that and it was all mush. So we couldn't save it. It was really shot. So then I had to put it back in again. Not easy. So this is about 2003, 2001, somewhere like that. Now, one day we actually had a museum committee, and it was like 4 or 5 of us on the committee. Suddenly it became only 3, Harry, Bruce, and I. And I dove out to Waterloo one day, and all of a sudden, let's see if I have the right picture. Here's Parry and Bruce painting the museum. And I literally said, "What the H are you doing? Why didn't you tell me?" They actually had some other volunteers out there at that time. They already had scraped the building down. They were putting a primer coat on. And they said they were going to actually take a break after this. And I said, "Let me know. I'll be out there to help you. I'll do everything I can." And when we got around to putting the finishing coat, because this museum literally looked great. This is, I think, 2004. Now that's Bruce up on the ladder, and that's the late Bill Moss down below. A wonderful gentleman, wonderful gentleman. And it looks like I wasn't doing anything because I'm taking the pictures, but every time I came down off the ladder, I was taking pictures to try and document this. And I was actually, this is the last day we were painting it. And I was actually supposed to be guiding in the museum that day. And I'm up on the ladder, way up, painting it. And Bill said, "Don't worry, if anybody comes around, goes into the museum, I'll take care of it. Don't come down off the ladder." And another shot, Bill Moss and Bruce. And this museum looked great, but this is the vinyl paint or whatever. It's not the oil paint that they used to have, and it didn't hold up over the years. But that's the Emperor's New Clothes. That's what it looked like in 2005. A beautiful job. They actually looked great. And people would come in and tell us, "How come your building is so beautiful?" I said, "We painted it." And Percy, who was supposed to supply the paint, didn't even have the money for the paint. So I don't know if the Canal Society bought it or Bruce and Parry bought it. I don't know who actually paid for the paint, but we actually paid for the paint. And this was the ribbon cutting of the opening of the new museum, newly painted. That's Bill Moss, the late Bill Moss, wonderful gentleman, wonderful gentleman. I don't know to love him or hate him because he was the one that got me involved in the museum. I haven't stopped. And we were cutting, I ran out there with a big red ribbon. I tied it in bows. I said, "We got to have a ribbon cutting. It's the opening of our season, the new paint job and everything." So we had a ribbon cutting. Now, this was about 2012, I think. This was on a canal day, and this is what the museum used to look like. In fact, that gentleman there with that straw hat, I think he was actually a former employee of Waterloo. I think he worked the grist mill. I'm not sure. Yeah. And this is Bruce, and he's in the museum. Again, this is what it looked like way back then. And when I took this photo, the exhibits were, I don't know, it looked like a mom and pop museum. It was horrible. I mean, some of those exhibits were in there since it opened probably in '74. So after I became director and after our past president, no names, resigned and Joe took over, I knew I had somebody I could work with. So I told Joe, I have to redo this museum. And most of the work I've done was down here on the first floor of the Morris Canal. Now, right behind me is the wall you're going to see. This was typical of the exhibits we had. And I just had to revamp them. I had to completely redo them. And Joe pretty much gave me free range of what to do. I would suggest what to do. He says, "Go ahead and do it." And so I did it. And this was the first plaque I put up. And this is Booton. And I always have then and now photos, and people can relate to it a lot better. If you can see up on the top, the center photo is the canal coming in at the top, and now it's the parking lot in the distance and the park closer. And again, on the center photos, the buildings where the incline plane used to be, and the Essen House on the far right. Here's a vertical map of the Booton, and down below a vertical photograph of aerial photograph. So, and the people can relate to this. I find that they can really relate quite well to this. Now, this is Joe's picture. I don't know, because he used it in the book. You had it on, what, a booklet or a book?
Beats me.
I don't know, I think it's Joe in Another Life. But this thing this is a huge photograph. It took almost this entire wall. So I did my magic on that. And there's that picture up in the top left corner. And this is life on the canal. This is women cooking. Last minute repairs on top of an inclined plane. The mule tenders. And one woman on the tiller up in the top right. So this is basically life on the canal. And that's the corner. Eventually, somebody came in and stole that rudder post. Somebody, 5-finger discount.
Who could have done
But
it?
I don't know. It didn't get too far. It went back in a white barn somewhere. Somebody stole it. So, and this model here, you can see that there's a model there of the chain. No, it's not a change bridge. It's the lift bridge in Wayne. Well, the Mountain View section in Wayne, and that's gone. That was. I don't want to even talk about that.
Big history project.
It was so out of scale. The towpath was on the wrong side. The bridge tender's house was on the wrong side. The towpath bridge looked like the Interstate 80 overpass, and the figurines, I don't know what's smaller than HO, were so tiny, it was totally out of scale. And this is how that whole wall ended up. And the feed box also disappeared. That was my favorite seat. I used to sit on that. And that's how it was back then. The next slide will show what it looks like today, and I need to update it a little bit more if we can. That's what it looks like now. This is the Mountain View section of Wayne. There's Booton next to it. Then and now photos to give people an idea of where they are today and what it looked like 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago. These two panels swivel. So you can get behind it to the window. So this actually replaced that model, which was of this photograph of the lift bridge in the Mountain View section of Wayne. So that's what it looks like now. Oh yeah, and I called Joe up one day. I said, Joe, I just saw a cabinet that we need at the Restore. And I told him exactly where it was. He says, well, you didn't buy it? I said, no, I really would like to have your permission to buy it. And he says, I'll go over and pick it up. And that dresser there, or whatever it's actually supposed to be, is what he picked up at the Restore. Who helped you with that?
If you're real nice, the guys who work here help you. Constant.
Yeah, and that bookcase is actually a shoe rack, and was very wobbly. It was, it felt like this. So I put dowels behind it and reinforced it, and that's our little book rack. All right, this is the lock model, and look at the walls. Look at how the photographs are displayed. It's like, yeah, that lock model actually worked off of water, and you would pump it through, but you had to take the time to spend with people operating it while you had other visitors in the museum. And it leaked. And there was water, there was buckets underneath it all the time. And I said, that's got to go. And this is a little later photograph. That Nighthawker up on the right disappeared. And you can see we still have the lock model down below. So at one of the board meetings, I asked Joe if I could put a kiosk in there. And I was hoping maybe we could pay for it, but this was a time when the Canal Society really didn't have the money. And Joe said, can you build it? And I'm like, oh yeah, I got to build this thing now. And that's what it looked like when I brought it in, and I got that at the Restore. This is oak, and boy, is that tough to screw through and drill through. I removed the glass shelf, the light and the mirror, and I gutted it. And this is in my, I'm sorry, it's not a clear shot, but this is in my kitchen up in Ringwood, or as I call it, Ringworm. And this is the guts of it, and I'm pretty much finished putting it together. And this little controller on the left side cost more than the entire unit. Because this was the type of controller we used up in the video room. That DVD player, CD player, DVD player is a professional DVD player. And they don't go for as much as they used to. And I have 3 of them now. And then I place it into the museum. And there it is with the Nighthawker still up there. And this way people can come in, it has headsets, they can come in, press the button, put the headsets on, they're not disturbed by the people around them, or they don't disturb the people around them. And they can watch a nice video on the canal and locks. And that's what I did. That's what the wall looked like before. And that's what the wall looks like now. I had to completely redo that wall, and there's a video going on the kiosk. Again, these are all locks, the DNR canal locks, Morris Canal locks. There's that English canal. Which one is that, Mr. McKelvey? The one with the whole flight of locks going up?
Can't remember
Yeah.
the name.
It takes, I think they say 4 to 6 hours to overcome that elevation change. Each one of those locks has a little pool next to it, so they can pull over and allow another boat to come through. So it takes 4 to 6 hours. The Morris Canal incline planes, what, 10 to 12 minutes, 15 minutes, so. That's the back of it. Not very interesting, but all the hookups and all that. There's some young visitors listening to it. Hopefully they continued watching it and were able to watch and hear the pirate captain singing at the end of the video. So the pirate captain was me. I was singing at the end of the video. This is the old Waterloo display, and this was a disaster. Every time I looked at this, I just thought, God, this can be improved. It's such a waste of space. And this thing was all wood framed and plexiglass in front. And I said, it could be done a lot better. And with that frame and being hung up and held in place, it took a part of the wall there. And so I said, when I took this down, I said, there's an outlet behind it in the middle of the wall. Why not put it down on the baseboard? Why is it doing, what's it doing there? I said, we have to extend that if that is even one that works. Who the heck knows? Hey. And that's what I replaced it with. And these photos on the far left side, I don't know what happened with, how did I get this in here? Huh?
Somebody in the Zoom conference is going.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Zoom. These are TIFF files, they're not JPEG files. These are very condensed files and a great deal of detail. And Ron Rice, when I took over the museum, he told me about the Library of Congress website, and I downloaded all these highly detailed photos. And I had to get another memory to help, because it's a lot of data. Or data. And that opened up that wall. And so another exhibit on that wall. And now I'm going to show you an enlargement. And now let me show you of this section. And Bierce must remember this when I talked to her about it. This is the old scale that they used to weigh the ore wagons on. And that's so clear, blown up from that other image, you can read what's painted on the base of that scale. Old Virginia. Now, there's no scale company called Old Virginia. It was a wine and bourbon whiskey and bourbon.
From David Farnham, who knows scales.
Yeah. Now, the Old Virginia Distillery, where is that at? What state?
Google it.
Old Virginia? No, Kentucky. Because that part of Kentucky was the original Virginia colony, Eastern Kentucky. So it's in Kentucky. And I don't know if somebody painted that on there or was that a slat from one of their crates, packing crates?
Crates were made of
Wood,
1-inch wood.
Yeah.
1-inch wood.
Then I went ahead and Mr. McKelvey's exhibit on the figurines, I cut them down and cut them up and I put them down below there. And more people seem to get a kick out of seeing these there. It gives them much more to see in one swoop view, one view. And a lot of kids, I think, relate to this too, that the younger children seem to have a better view of these than where they used to be. And that opened up another space for me. So I have it here and there they are.
Now, where did you get that set of matched chairs?
Those chairs are always in there.
Is it?
Those chairs are always in there. Yeah. Yeah. And there's the old display as it was along that wall. And that's with it gone. Now I had to fill it with something else. And this is my pickup truck. And Beers told me I wanted to look up the name of the church that was selling this in Butler. The Butler Church that was selling this. Remember, you called me up and they said they had a display, the Methodist Church. I went over, I looked at this display, I said, I want it. You know, they didn't. They wanted to get rid of it. Then the little thing came along called COVID. So we had to hold off on picking it up. But they said it would be here when you want it, when you want to come pick it up, when you get the clearance, and then the COVID is over, and that's what I did. I went over there, I picked it up, they helped me load it in the back of the pickup truck. I brought it up to my house. This is my house in Ringwood. And I put all padding and stuff around it to make sure the long voyage out to Waterloo wouldn't get damaged. And there it is in the back of the pickup truck. And when I made it out to Waterloo, Bill Greger helped me unload it, put it in the museum. And that's what it looks like in the museum. Now that drill bit, that impact drill bit there is actually mine. I had that in my garage in Ringwood. The other chain links I found downstairs in the basement amongst the collection of all rusted iron. I think those are the chains from the incline plane cars, holding the incline plane cars ahead. They're not big enough to hold a boat or pull a boat up.
Standard railroad Lincoln bin.
Yeah.
Links from a railroad, yeah.
Yeah, so would it be the link between the two cradle cars? Yeah. One is from Waterloo. I forget where the other one is from. And up here I have a photograph of my painting of the Morris Canal, which I have a whole book on the artist who painted this. And there's some other displays here up on the top. And every once in a while, I bring the actual painting in. This painting was a gem. I bought it for a literal fraction of its actual value. I paid $550 for this painting. I went down to Whiting to spend some time with my father because my mother had passed away and I was running back and forth to Whiting. And I said, one day I'm going to go out and take a ride. And my father said, go ahead, don't worry about it. I went over to a famous antique shop and I found this hanging from a railing. And you couldn't really see it from down below. I went up, walked around the back of the railing, and all these labels are all over the back, old labels. And I said, I'm going to be damned if I do, and maybe more damned if I don't. And this was a noted artist from the early 20th century. I had it cleaned. I had some restoration work done on it. More damage was done to the frame than anything else, but the conservator who worked on it, he realized the value of this painting because of the artist. And A painting that I paid $550 for is now valued at $25,000. And the only other person that probably appreciates this is Mr. Goller, Bob Goller, because when he found out I owned this, he was, I'd say, not too friendly, not too happy. This is the inclined plane model. Now, this hadn't worked for, at this time, maybe 15 or 16 years. And to work on it, I needed some assistance, and some guys in this room came in and helped me with this, because to get this case off, you need two people. When Bill Moss had this originally made and he premiered it at our Canal Society meeting many years ago, this is back when we were in Morristown, there were no access ports on it at all. And I guess somebody told them when they saw that on the screen, you got to put something in there. We got to get in and work on this thing. And these things are about as useful as a breast on a bull, because you can't work on it with these things. You have to take the whole thing off. And earlier in some years earlier, Bob Yule and a group of volunteers actually were working on this. Frank Mentone was one of those volunteers. And I walked in there and saw them working on this. Oh, great, they're going to get this working. They're going to get this working. And Bob Yule suffered a heart attack at home and passed away. And everybody just walked away from it. And so it sat there as a static model. In fact, we were actually missing one of the cradle cars and boats, because he had it at his house when he passed away. But we got that back, thanks to our past president. And he said, put it on there. And I tried to put it on there, going through that thing. And I was like, I don't know how many things I knocked over or broke. You know, it was impossible to work on it. So when Jeff and I started working on it, we had to take the whole thing off. And we did our best to try and be careful with it. And there's that model in the background, Mountain View section of Wayne, which was just totally out of whack. And this is what the motor looked like. And this was their big mistake. This reel, it only goes halfway around. Well, how many times have you ever taken a clothesline and just try to turn the reel when the clothes are on it? It don't work, no matter how tight, it'll just slip. They had a fake line going to the drum inside the powerhouse. This is my solution. This is a beading wire, and I almost hate to call it a wire. This thing is so flexible, you could tie it literally in a knot. And I looped it 1.5 times around. And you can see the fake one going off, still not turning the drum. And Jeff was in there with me. I don't know if he were underneath the model at that time. I said, I got this thing hooked up, let's try it. I pressed the button and it works. I was like, holy jumping Jehoshaphat, it works. And there's that fake line going to the powerhouse, not turning anything. And there's the other wire going around the main pulley. And later on, and here's that crazy guy that came in and helped me. Here's a picture of him. A younger you. Doing some soldering and working very, very, very well with me. We worked together quite well. And I don't know if Jeff wants to say anything about it, but huh? I got it covered. And I really thank him for all his help. And there again, he's working on something on the motor. And actually right now it's not working. I have actually one of the spools at my house and I have to repair. And that's the greasy gearing. In fact, this is the spool, this main spool with the plastic on the end that I have at the house. And we just got a new cover for it too. And this is the wire. That's the beading wire. And that's not a 1943 copper penny. It's a 1993 copper penny. And it has 5 tiny threads that are wrapped around. So literally this is a wire rope. Of course, it's held together by plastic, the plastic wrapping, but it's a wire rope and it's very, very flexible. And we actually made on the level. Jeff and I think, was it Ron Rice that came and photographed us that day? Do you remember?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I think it was Ron Rice came and photographed us, put it on the level. Again, another work, but this time, let's see. I now only wrapped it around one time and ran the cable to the powerhouse, so it would turn the drum inside the powerhouse. And we had to hide all that fake stuff down below, the tensioners and all that. And we had to move some of the reels down closer to hold these on, because these actually are not held on the pivot points here. They will pop off from the tension. So we had to move everything down closer to keep the wire down and keep the reels on the spools. And we did our best to try and handle this as carefully as possible. And I don't know if you can see, but there's a line here, a line up there, a line going to the back, a line down the back. I actually cut this in half. And the only thing holding it together was the access port. So I could work on it and take it apart when I was there by myself. It was easy to work. And but we did our best, and we tried to keep it clean, and we already had some cracks to it. I don't know how that happened. That's what I really wanted to do with it. This thing was such a pain in the neck to work with. And it got to the point where actually it was getting too cracked and broken up. So we made just two sides and actually used the plexiglass from the Waterloo exhibit, because I keep everything. Everything goes down in the basement, and if I could use it, I use it again. And for a couple of seasons we had it like this, and it was easier access to work on it. But then again, you really want to cover it completely. And I actually walked up to the far corner, you can't see it, and there was a sticker on it from the people who originally built it. And let's see, what the heck? Can't remember names here. Stuart Mills and his assistant Kurt Weiner. And that sticker is so old, even though he's up in Sussex County, the area code was 201. It's on the sticker. So I just made it 973. He answered the phone. I told him who I was. He said he remembers working on this. I said, can you come down and take a look at it? I designed the top for it, the case for it. He changed a few things on it, but kept it pretty much the same. And they worked on it very hard, and that's the new case there. And that wooden piece across is to help absorb the weight of the door. It says the access door, because that whole thing opens. It folds back and then back up again. And that panel up there is to keep it from scratching the wall or scratching the plexiglass. And it's very easy to work on it now, if only we can get it going again. So, and spend a little bit of money on that.
Jim Lee had that for a while.
Oh yeah, this was given to us by Jim Lee, and he had it in his home. But when his wife became very ill and she had some diabetic condition, she needed a special bed, and the only place to put it was in the museum, and that's when he donated it to us.
I remember when he got that, because he talked about, he says somebody asked him if he had a place for it.
Yeah.
And he said, I'll put the refrigerator on the porch, I'll find room for it.
Yeah, the late Jim Lee. And that's pretty much it, because most of everything I've done was on the bottom floor. We need to get up on the first floor, and we need to do the work there. Yes.
When we first got that Canal Museum in 1974, I was a guide there that first summer. And it was really, as you said, rudimentary.
Yeah, it was, and it was for many years, unfortunately.
Everybody donated, that book went on the wall.
Yeah. So, and I have to say, and I'm sorry if I talk about myself, but at this time when I took it over, the Canal Society finances were not that great. So all the work I did, I printed the photos, I built the exhibits. I put my money into it to help keep it going because it really needed to be upgraded. It was bad. It was, yeah. Walk in there, it's like, ah, they could do this, they could do this, they could do that. We got 10. I didn't have to rush through it that fast.
Let's hear it for Rich.
The thing is, if I may say, I did all the photography, all the photocopying, all the printing. We had to save money back then.
Thank you, Rich. Do we have any announcements? Bill, you had something to say?
Yeah, I got a quickie. I'm working on a new book on the Easton and Washington trolley that went from Phillipsburg up to Washington and Port Murray. And we discovered an oil pipeline 6 inches in diameter that was laid in the 1880s. It ended up in Changewater, and it crosses Route 57 in Broadway, just a few hundred feet above the car barn in Broadway that on 57, it's still there. And just immediately below Belvedere Avenue or Belvedere Road. It is now used as a fiber optics conduit. And the tag on, there's poles or identification poles that say Williams Communications. And I know I got guys here that will and gals that love to do hiking on canals. I'd like to know where that pipeline crosses the Morris Canal west of Route 57. It should be easy to find because these markers are every several hundred feet. If you find out, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. One last request. I understand that we are a little short in volunteers on Waterloo on the 5th. And so if some of you, one of you might be able to help with the grist mill, we'd be most appreciated. And you could see Bobby to talk about, or Lou standing up there in the red shirt. Okay, any other announcements, any other questions or any thoughts before we close up for the night?
About any updates on the Goller vote.
Okay, Bob Goller is working on the final. I believe that he has completed the last round of corrections. We are negotiating about the printing, and so we should be, it would be possible, might be possible to have books for our November meeting or sometime in December. So that is our goal at this point. It depends on whether we in fact do have a final copy, and so we're working closely with Bob about that. It's a great book, and we're looking forward to making it available to you. Thoughts or questions? Any other thing online? Jeff, other questions? Nope. Thank you, folks. See you in November. And once again, I've got walk in Wharton tomorrow. 2 folks already asked to join. Please come and see me about attending that walk. Thank you again.